Hello friend, welcome back to Acre Homestead. My name is Becky. Today we are going to do kind of the last final harvest. There'll be more harvests to come, but it'll just be little things like me running out to go grab some lettuce, cilantro, things like that. But I plan to go out there today and get as many of the tomatoes as I can, all the peppers, and see what else we can find out there. Plus we're going to do a lot of maintenance while we're out there. I want to harvest some pepper plants, and I'm going to try to overwinter pepper plants. Pepper plants are not annuals, which means they will come back year after year in warmer climates, and so you have to bring them inside. I'm in zone 7, A or B, I don't really know. So they will not survive year after year in my zone, but if I bring them inside, I should be able to transplant them back out in the garden next spring with a few month head start. So we're going to attempt that this year. I've wanted to try it every year, didn't have the bandwidth, but I have the bandwidth today to harvest some pepper plants. So we've got a bunch of projects I want to get going today. Oh, I also have 3 varieties of garlic we're going to plant, 2 soft neck varieties and elephant garlic. So I need to bring this out in the garden and get this planted today. I've got my list here of all the things I want to get planted and done in the garden. It's only 62 today, so it is a beautiful day to be out in the garden. I have my blowtorch, I need some scissors, some shovels, a weeder. We've got a bunch of projects. These are what I'm going to plant the pepper plants in when we get back inside. Okay, I'm going to grab some paper bags in case we see some seeds that need to be harvested. I've got a pen. Let's see. Oh, I need to do some weed killing because it's sunny today and tomorrow. It's been torrential downpour for the last few days. And to do this weed killing that I need to do around the garden beds in the gravel area, I need it to be sunny. This is my mom's natural weed killer, and I would never use this in my raised beds, but it works great on walkways or gravel or sidewalks or anything like that. And so we're going to go ahead and make some of this weed killer up so that I can bring this down to the garden. I've already done this once this year, but I know that there's probably some more weeds that need to be taken care of. So I have salt here. The recipe is 2 cups of salt, and I like to start with salt because then I can get it to dissolve. Soap. This next ingredient I am going to put safety glasses on for, just because I purchased 30% vinegar. You do not need to use this. You could use 5% vinegar, just the vinegar you would cook with or can with. But because I've got so much gravel around my garden, I knew that I would need a lot of this, and so I bought the concentrated stuff. So we're going to dilute this. So because this is 30%, it has the potential to be pretty irritating. So that's why I'm putting glasses on, but we are going to dilute it to what would be 5%. So you would put 2 cups of salt, 1/2 cup of soap, and then I'm going to put 1/5 of this 30% acidity in here. But if you just had your regular old vinegar from the grocery store, put 2 gallons in there. I can write this recipe down in the description box. And then my mom's trick is, once you have the soap, vinegar, and salt in there, mix it with the wand before you dilute it with water. While that's sitting there for a second, I'm going to grab a couple other things while that's dissolving. We need baskets to harvest, but get this in our wheelbarrow. We're going to put a couple of the beds to bed. So I'm going to grab some of this landscape fabric. Hopefully I have enough to cover 2 of the beds today, because that's my goal. And then let's bring this out. I think I got everything. I probably didn't, and I'm going to have to run back in here to grab something, but that's okay. We are going to be harvesting all the green tomatoes, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to bring them inside and ripen them inside so that I can enjoy fresh tomatoes until probably November, mid-November, and it's working out really well so far. I harvested these tomatoes about a week and a half ago, and they're just starting to blush and turn beautiful, and I'm keeping a close eye on them. So I'm excited to share with you that the way that we are ripening these green tomatoes is indeed working for us. I also just remembered some soil amendments to put the garden to bed, a compost bucket because I know there's going to be tomatoes that need to go directly to the chickens, and some tape so we can label our garlic. And I was looking for my nippers because I know that there's a lot of plants that need to be cut down, but I can't find them. So I have some scissors in here. Hopefully that'll do the trick. This is going to be a fantastic day in the garden, in the sunshine, on this beautiful October day. I think the first thing I'm gonna do is pick all the peppers because that's not gonna take very long. I don't have that many more out here. I've been slowly collecting the peppers as they've been ready. And so there's just some small ones out here. So let's collect the peppers first because that can be an easy win under our belt. I'm just gonna unload my wheelbarrow because a lot of this stuff we won't need for this particular thing. You know what, we can actually keep some of this stuff in the wheelbarrow. The biggest thing we need right now are these baskets. So let's grab some peppers. So if I take this in, I can cut half of this off and we can enjoy half of it. This is a little bit soft. See, these have disease on them. Oh, but that one looks good. That is all of the peppers we have left of this year. I thought there was going to be more out here, but these pepper plants are looking, they are done. For some reason, I thought there were more plants out here, but I think we're going to call that the pepper harvest. That's the bed we were just in, and the poblano pepper plants look fabulous. They've actually put on a ton of baby peppers. There are so many little pepper plants or peppers on these plants, but we're getting down into the 40s now, and so there is not time for any of these poblano peppers to turn into anything. So I'm going to harvest one of these plants. I'm not sure which one yet, and we will try to overwinter one of these poblano plants along with one of the Chinese color peppers. These have a ton of fruit. I've harvested probably 4 or 5 times off these 4 plants. Because the peppers are so little, they grow so quick. So we're going to try to harvest one of these plants to overwinter. Look how beautiful that is. The only other pepper plant I'm going to try to overwinter is going to be one of the Tabasco pepper plants because my bell pepper plants just don't look very good, and I don't think it's worth trying to save them for next year. I think we're going to start over just because they don't look super fantastic. That could just be because it's the end of the season too. I'm not exactly sure. Or it could be disease. Next thing I'm going to harvest is this melon. This is an early melon, and I think it's the only one that's even closely to be ready to be ripe. So I'm going to pick that. I think I'm going to go ahead and grab this little one too. And we'll cut this open when we go inside. But I want to show you the weeds here. This is why I wanted to make that weed killer, because there's a few areas in the garden where weeds have popped up, and I do not want these to get out of control. While they're still really little, I want to go ahead and get them taken care of so we don't have a big problem on our hands for next year. I have 2 more melons on this side. We'll harvest them and see what they look like on the inside when we go inside. The only other squash I have coming off this bed is this one, and it is rotten. So I think I'm going to take a second now to finish cleaning up this bed. Mostly it's just this stuff over here that needs to be taken care of. I decided to go ahead and empty my wheelbarrow so I could fill it with this compost. I didn't want to leave all my garden maintenance for the very end of the season, so that's why this year I'm kind of cleaning as I'm going, cleaning as I'm harvesting. In the past, I've just left it a complete mess, and then it's a huge project, and I've really been enjoying just kind of cleaning up as things are done, harvesting, getting them pulled out, getting the area cleaned and tidied back up, and then it's more enjoyable when I'm working on other areas in the garden that I don't have messes kind of throughout the garden. So that's why I'm taking a minute to clean this up. My goal this year is to remove almost everything from the garden and so that we can start fresh next year. But I've really been enjoying looking at this kale, and I'm curious to see how it's going to do over winter. So I think I'm going to leave the kale here, but I might change my mind. We'll see. But for today, we're going to leave the kale here. And then I think what I'm going to do next is start collecting a bunch of the green tomatoes. I had friends come over the weekend and harvest as many of the red tomatoes as they wanted. So there's not going to be that many red tomatoes. I'm going to put the peppers in here, so I've got a basket to harvest the green tomatoes in. I think it's about time to say goodbye to the tomatoes and tomatillos. These are the tomatillos here. I'm going to harvest all the tomatillos today, and then we'll call it for the tomatillos. Sometimes when you're harvesting tomatillos, you kind of have to push them back and look on the ground. I decided to go ahead and leave all the tomatillos basically on the plants that weren't ready to harvest, and I just didn't want to pick them. I didn't have the heart to, because there are so many on the plant still that are not ripe or even the size they should be. And so I just went ahead and I left that tomatillo plant alone, and we're moving on to harvest the green tomatoes because there are so many green tomatoes. This garden, the tomatoes, has been just bananas this year. I planted 59 plants of indeterminate varieties, so the ones along this back side of the garden that are growing up the trellises. I probably had like 3 of them that died that didn't do so well, and then we have the Roma tomato bed that I have already cleaned out and taken care of for the year. So what is that? 59, 60, 70 plants, and this has been more than enough tomato products for Josh and I. I've had friends and family come and harvest off these plants a couple times. I've gifted a ton of tomatoes to my loved ones to do tomato processing projects, and I've also donated a bunch of them to my local community. And so I'm just blown away by how productive these tomato plants have been, and it's just been a huge blessing. I had no expectations that this would be a crazy abundant year for a first-year garden, and it has blown my expectations out of the water. So I'm just going down the garden and I'm harvesting the green tomatoes that have not split. Like I had mentioned earlier, we have had a week of torrential downpour, and so it's caused some of the plants to split. When I'm looking at tomatoes to pick that are green, I want them to be, see that crack? I don't know if that's going to ripen. Like, definitely not that. That's too cracked. But this one looks perfect. I don't know if this is going to ripen properly, because that looks like a little bit of blight to me on it. So if you see me leaving tomatoes behind, it's because they're cracked and pretty rotten, and it's not worth bringing them inside. So I'm going to, once I harvest all these green tomatoes, we'll come back at some point and I'll rip all these plants out, and I'll give to the chickens what I can give to the chickens, and then the rest of it will just be composted. But I'm excited to see what these little clusters do, because they're kind of like on the vine, and so I'm thinking vine ripened inside. My hope is that I could have fresh tomatoes, because I do have some green ones that are ripening in the house right now, you know, for a month or two to come. I'll show you how I'm going to lay these out for harvest, hopefully later this year, as long as they ripen inside. I'm collecting little piles around the garden of the green tomatoes because I'm going to have to run inside and grab more baskets. I've got one more area where I'm going to collect the green tomatoes, and then that is going to officially be the tomato harvest for 2023. I do have one plant over here that is putting on a ton of new growth. This is a cherry tomato that I planted. I got this seed from Dollar Tree. You can see all this new growth. It's just going crazy. So I'm going to leave this plant here, and I'll see how long I can get cherry tomatoes off that plant. But the rest of the plants, they're telling me they're done for the year. But I've got this beautiful plant here that's got a lot of beautiful green tomatoes on it that don't look like they're too diseased yet. So I'll harvest these green tomatoes. And oh, it looks like there's even some good red ones on this one. And that's gonna be 2023 garden harvest for tomatoes. These red tomatoes look beautiful. These ones must have been missed by my friends that came over to do a big harvest. I said that they could pick as many of the green ones as they wanted, but mostly it was just red that were harvested, which is totally fine. I don't mind managing these green tomatoes at all. You know what I think I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go dump all this, and then I'm gonna put the tomatoes in this. So instead of picking them up and setting them down, picking them up, setting them down, I will put them in here, and then I can bring them to where I'm gonna ripen them. In my experience, when it comes to ripening green tomatoes inside, is if they do show signs of blight or disease, they will turn red inside, but then they just kind of get gross because they have some disease. I don't think they would be hurtful to eat, but just not appetizing. And so that is why I am trying to be as selective as possible, because I know in the past that, you know, I'll bring every tomato inside even when they don't look great, and then they just end up needing to go to the chickens anyway. I have watched videos where people have actually cut the whole tomato, like at the ground plant. They cut the whole tomato plant, not the tomato, the whole tomato plant, and they bring that inside and they hang it upside down and they ripen tomatoes that way. I have never done that, and I think that is super intriguing. The reason I am just picking the individual tomatoes is because I have so many of them. This is a lot easier to manage than managing the tomatoes and the plants. There is 2023's tomato harvest. Now I know I'll be able to get more tomatoes off these plants here, these cherry tomato plants, but I'm considering the tomato harvest done, even though I'll be able to pick a few off here and there. I am blown away. I think I planted 59 tomato plants. Some of them did very poorly, some of them outdid themselves, and not only was it enough tomatoes products for me to put up for Josh and I between what I already had in my pantry for this next year, it was enough to gift to tons to my loved ones, and not only that, but also to my local community. So huge win when it comes to the tomatoes. Now, I could bring these in right now, but I feel like since the sun is out, I want to stay out here. I want to enjoy this while I can. Let's go deal with the weeds, because I need to deal with those while the sun is still out. It's not supposed to rain tomorrow, so this is the perfect time to address some of these weeds. I don't have to worry about the vinegar or anything now because I've already diluted it. I shook it up a little bit, make sure that salt is dissolved, and now all I'm gonna do is pump my little pump and spray it directly onto my weeds. I would never, ever, ever put this in my raised bed or in a flower bed or anything like that. I'm only doing this because this is the gravel, and it's not going to have anything that I'm ever going to plant in. I already went around the garden over the last weekend and got the majority of the areas where I saw weeds. I didn't see those ones because they were underneath the squash plant, and that's really the only area where weeds have popped up, are where they were protected with some sort of plant and where the irrigation from the beds sprays out and was watering the walkways. But for the most part, it hasn't been hardly any weed pressure at all. And just a little bit of this in this little container, which I will keep probably made up all the time, so that when I see little weeds pop up, I can just spray them and we'll keep them under control. One thing that's been happening, it doesn't look like the squirrels got this one, but the squirrels have been chopping the sunflowers off. You can see the damage a little bit better here. This is squirrel damage. And what they do is they decapitate. You can see they've decapitated my sunflowers, and then they carry them over somewhere and they chomp on them. So I'm gonna need to clean that up in a little bit. But for now, let's get what we need to put this 2 beds to bed. I'm gonna set the garlic down over here in this bed because I need to get the garlic planted over here. Now that I got the weeds taken care of, let's go ahead and take care of these 2 raised beds. So I am picking any weeds before I put this bed to bed. There are a couple weeds in here that I can see. I don't want to plant those, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to pull them up by the roots. This is a big weed. Holy cow, look at that root I just pulled out. Wow, okay, chuck that over the fence. These are officially the first 2 beds that I'm getting put to bed for winter. My dad and I put a bed to bed, but then I ended up using that bed to plant the garlic, and so that bed is already ready for 2024's garden, and we're gonna plant some more garlic in it today. But these are the first 2 beds that are officially just done for the year. So I do end up, you can see on this bed here, the right-hand side of the bed, there is a bunch of sunflower stalks. What I should have done when I cut those down is cut those all the way down to the soil, because I have to go ahead and do that today. So I kind of doubled my work. So I do that, I pull out the cosmos. There's some cosmos here at the very end of the bed. I pull those out and I get any weed out that I see. The next thing I do is I put 2 cups of soil amendment in the bed that has some chicken manure in it. I can link that down below. And then I'm putting 2 bags of compost in each bed and 1 bag of steer manure. And then I'm gonna evenly distribute that throughout the bed. And then I do still plan to do a soil test. I did a soil test at the beginning of the garden season, and it told me that I was pretty nutrient deficient in nitrogen. And so that's why I'm working on building the soil and the soil health and the soil nutrients. And I'm trying to get some of this work done so that come spring, I don't have quite as much work to do. Now we're in the next bed. Both these beds we're putting to bed were the beds that had carrots and onions in them, plus some summer squash and winter squash and other flowers and things like that. But the majority of what was in here was carrots and onions. And you can see here, I just left some carrot tops and I let those compost, and you can already see how much they've kind of broken down since we harvested the carrots about a week ago. And here I am putting the soil amendments in here. I did the same thing in this bed, 2 bags of compost, 1 bag of manure, and 2 cups of soil amendments. Now, this is just what I'm doing. I am not an expert gardener. I did not look up, how much compost or manure I should add. I did look on the back of my soil amendments, how much I should add to the beds. And so I'm following those directions, but I'm just kind of going with my gut and my feeling. And it tells me 2 bags of compost seems like a good amount, and 1 bag of manure plus the amendments. That's what I did when I turned over the 1 spring bed to a summer bed. And the crops that I planted after I did this combination exploded. They looked beautiful. And so I'm just kind of going with it. It worked. So I'm doing the same thing to see if I can get my spring crops to start growing with more vigor than they did this last spring. I've been talking about how abundant my garden was. Well, I was worried about it at the beginning of the spring because everything was very stunted when I put it in the ground. And so I'm hoping that things going into 2024 are just going to be vigorous from the start. I have the beds all prepped for winter. I snipped down the sunflower stalks that were on the edge of this bed. They were really, really beautiful, but it was time to say goodbye to them. I hope I have enough landscape fabric. Oh my goodness. Okay, friend, I have 5 feet. So I don't even have enough to do one bed. So I guess what I'm gonna do is just sweep all the compost into the bed, and then I will order it right now, and I will come out as soon as it comes in the mail to cover these beds. But at least I have the compost on it now. I should be able to get it in the next couple days because I ordered it on Amazon and it was on Prime, so I'll get it in the next couple days. So I'm not gonna put the irrigation back in the bed because I don't want to double the work. So now I'm going to go ahead and plant garlic, which is going to be fun. But first I'm going to get all the stakes in this bucket so that I don't lose those. I knew I probably should have ordered it. I'm kind of bummed with myself that I didn't order it. I knew I should have ordered it, but it's okay. I will get it covered before winter. I already have 2 varieties of garlic planted, and here I've got elephant garlic. I'm going to open this up. I don't think I'm going to eat any of this elephant garlic when I harvest it if it does well, and I'm going to save it to plant all of it next year because I want more than I was able to get my hands on. Because I only had 1 head, which was 2, 4, 6 cloves, and I know for future I'm going to want more than that. So it's cool. Garlic will garlic will expand. It's amazing. It's exponential. Got my torch here. I'm gonna do my elephant garlic next. Okay, everything is getting labeled as best to my ability. So this is the next variety. $13, $14, $15, $16, $17. Two, 4. I do plan to go back and replace this orange tape with white tape. On this day when I was doing this, I could not find my white tape anywhere, and it ended up I found it in my car, and I have no idea how it ended up in my car, but alas, I'm just glad that on this day I labeled everything. I am using a UV protective pen. You cannot use Sharpie in the garden because the sun just destroys the writing within a month or two. And so you want to make sure you use a UV protective pen, and I can link that down below. And I've had the best luck this last year with using tape, putting it on the landscape fabric, labeling it. I've had so much fun, and I've been proud of myself that this last year has been the best year knowing what crops are what. Now, I didn't know about half my tomatoes were, and I was really bummed about that. So I am getting better, and my goal is to continue to get better at labeling, and I want to know each and every variety of garlic when I harvest, because I definitely, when you harvest and you know what variety, I feel like you get a lot of information from that. And so, like, I loved the fact that I knew what varieties of green beans I had throughout the garden, what varieties of carrots, what varieties of onions. I knew a few of my tomato plant varieties. I liked knowing what varieties of peas I planted, and I just felt like I got a lot of information from that, and so that I'm going to just continue to be better. So all that to say, I used the orange tape because it was so important that I got labels for this garlic. Now, other than the hardneck varieties, these two garlics that I'm planting are soft necks, and my goal for these is to be able to harvest them and braid them. I haven't been able to braid garlic in 2 years. My first year I grew garlic, the garlic that I grew was, I planted it in the spring, and I basically just grew a garlic clove from a garlic clove. They did nothing. The second year I planted hardneck and softneck varieties, and I was able to get garlic that I braided, and it was beautiful, and I so loved having the braids of garlic. And then the last 2 years I have not had garlic that I can braid, and so I'm really hoping that this following year, 2024, is going to be the year of the garlic braids for me. And the best way to have garlic braids is to use a soft neck variety. I have watched a video where you can remove the hard neck portion of a hard neck variety, but we're going to try to braid the soft neck varieties I planted this year. I'm going to go put these tomatoes away, and then we'll come back and harvest a couple pepper plants to overwinter. And then let's see if I can do this. Oh yeah, that works. Alrighty, friend. I've got my wheelbarrow here, and I've got a tablecloth on this dead freezer that no longer works. Let me bring this around. We are going to use this down here in the food storage room as a tomato ripening corner. So I'm going to just lay these tomatoes out, and that way every time I come down here, which is pretty regularly, almost every day, I can take a quick peek at them, see how they're doing. I think I'm going to turn them upside down. And I'm just going to fill this area with tomatoes. I don't even know if this is going to be a big enough table. I have seen so many different ways to ripen your tomatoes indoors. And like I mentioned earlier, I've seen one way where you take the whole plant and bring it inside. I cannot manage that many plants in my house. Another way I have seen is to wrap them individually in paper and put them in a cardboard box. I've seen put them in a paper bag and store them in a dark location. This basement, I keep the lights off. I have blackout curtains on the sliding door, and so this area is going to stay very dark unless I come down here and turn the lights on. But the reason I'm choosing to lay them out in a single file, like one layer thick, and not wrap them individually is because I want to be able to keep a very, very close eye on this as this happens. I want to see if a tomato is going bad and not ripening properly, and I can chuck that and bring that to the chickens, and it's not going to spoil a bunch of other ones. If I see that some tomatoes are ripe, I want to be able to bring them upstairs and prioritize to either cook them or put them in the freezer or do a canning project or something like that. And so I am choosing to lay them single layer thick on this tablecloth. I did put a tablecloth down so that I can manage them easier. I can just come down here when I'm grabbing, say, applesauce or tomato products or something, and I can just quickly look at everyone, and I'm not having to open up, paper bags or unwrap them to check to see how they're doing, because they will not ripen all at the same rate. Here is the tomatoes. Now, I didn't have quite enough space on the freezer, so I've got this box down here, and that is the tomatoes. So let's go outside and harvest some pepper plants. I'm gonna harvest this Chinese 5-color pepper. It's gonna be a little bit tricky because I've got this landscape fabric. And I think what I'm gonna do is pull the landscape fabric up. Let's see, maybe I'm not gonna do that. You wanna try to get as much of the roots up as you can, so I'm going to work my tool up underneath the landscape fabric, push down up underneath, lift. I think I got most of the roots with it. And then you want to remove all the leaves and peppers. So we'll do this up. Let's see. No, I'm going to do this here. You want to remove all the leaves and 2/3 of the plant. I totally forgot I wanted to harvest one of the poblano peppers, and the peppers that I end up harvesting are 2 of my Tabasco peppers and that one Chinese 5-color pepper. I did not get any real peppers off my Tabasco plants, and I've been trying to grow these little plants since 2020. And so I figured I really want to grab 2 of these plants, try to overwinter them, and see if I can give them a head start. And maybe 2024 is the year for harvesting Tabasco peppers to make hot sauce out of Tabasco peppers. So we'll see. We are back where we started with a few extra goodies in our basket. I think I grabbed everything from the garden that should come back up here. Now, I did decide to pull one more Tabasco plant. So I figured I should have 2 just in case. Oh no. I think these 2 are Tabasco and this one's Chinese 5-color. I'm gonna get these in these 2 pots. I've got one more pot I'm gonna go grab. This soil is some store-bought potting mix that did not get used a ton, so I think it's gonna have a good amount of nutrients in it. I'm gonna add some more to it. Got our soil amendments here. This is pretty powerful stuff, so I'm just gonna sprinkle some in there. And there already is some slow-release fertilizer in here that I don't think got used up because I just opened this bag and these plants died basically. I didn't water them. They were in an area where I wasn't thinking, so I think they'll be fine. This is something I have wanted to do for the last 4 years. I have watched so many videos of people doing this, and some people have 10-year-old pepper plants that they keep in pots and they, bring in and out every single season. And so I've always wanted to try this. I'm so excited we're trying it. I just now, as I'm talking to you and watching this, I realized, oh gosh, I forgot that I wanted to save a poblano pepper plant. So I've already ripped out the pepper plants now for the year. So we're going to go with these 3 pepper plants, and if it works, then maybe next year we'll expand, and maybe we'll keep these pepper plants in these pots and we won't put them in the garden beds. I'm not exactly sure, but I am excited to see how well this works. And let me know if any of you guys have done this and if you've had any success with doing this, because I think it's such a cool idea and it could save a ton of time come this spring. That could be an absolute complete flop, or I could have a jump start on next year's garden. It doesn't hurt anything to try, because those pots were just gonna sit empty until next year anyway. And so might as well put something in it and see if we can get a jump start on next year's harvest. I didn't get any Tabasco peppers this year, and I would really, really like to be able to get some Tabasco peppers. So we're going to see if we can get a harvest by doing that. So I'm just gonna take a second and put all this stuff away. This is garbage in here, and so I'm gonna get all this soil into this bucket and then get this tossed, and then we're gonna go inside and we are going to taste test our melon that I harvested. Well, that was quite the afternoon in the garden. Let's get this melon washed up and cut into and see if it's any good. Oh, look at that. It's like a yellow watermelon with big seeds. Oh, it smells really good. It's a watermelon. That is the most interesting thing. It's a yellow watermelon. Now this piece happens to have no seeds, but there's some pretty dang big seeds in here. So you're gonna have to be careful eating it, but that means we got 2 melons out of the garden. I have never grown a melon. I've attempted. I haven't even got the seeds to germinate. So the fact that we got 2 melons out of, I think I planted 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 plants. Hey, that's better than I've ever gotten. So huge win. Well, friend, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with me in the garden. We will find out together next year whether or not those pepper plants survive. I'm thinking I'm gonna bring them inside and put them in my sunroom. That's my thought. Or I'm gonna put them in the seed growing room with the grow lights that I can put on timers. I'll just have to remember to water them if they're in the seed growing room. I kind of worry out of sight, out of mind. So we'll just figure it out together where they end up. Let me know your suggestions if they should be inside in the sunroom. I was thinking they could be on my windowsill here because there's a lot of light right here, but those pots are clearly way too big to sit there. So I don't think that's gonna work. I was thinking that originally, but we'll figure it out. Give me your suggestions, what you think if you've ever done this before. I know last year a bunch of you had recommended that I attempt this, but I did not have the bandwidth to attempt it. And this year I'm excited with the 3. Hopefully we can get one of them to survive. So if you enjoyed this, friend, I can pop a couple of my other videos here. You can go enjoy it between now and my next upload. I want to thank you again for taking time out of your day to spend time with me in my garden. And we will see how the tomatoes ripen downstairs. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being you. And I can't wait to see you next time. Bye, friend.